Well, please welcome now to the program my old friend Carl Jeffers. Good morning, Mr. Jeffers.
Good morning, Don. Good to be with you today.
How are you?
I'm pretty good considering I had a vertigo attack on the plane coming out from L.A. to New York this weekend, and they had to actually hook me up to oxygen on the plane. They went on the intercom, asked for a doctor or nurse to help. I mean, it can be pretty serious, but fortunately, I was able to get through it with the help of my buddy D.L. Hewley, who was on the flight with me and saw me all the way through the luggage and baggage claim, and I had to cancel driving down to Baltimore to see my folks. It just wasn't going to work out. But I'm better. It's a periodic thing that I have. This is the worst I've had it since 15 years ago when I lost the hearing in my left ear flying on a red eye from L.A. to Toronto then. So it's a tough thing. But I'm going to adjust the schedule, less red eyes, and try to deal with it. So given all of that, I'm none the worse for wear.
What are the symptoms? What happens? What happened on a plane?
I am not sure about it. I've talked with doctors, consulted with them, because I seem to only get it when I'm flying on a red eye or late at night.
Well, no, man, but what happens?
You start to lose complete sense of balance. Your feet don't seem to even be on the floor. Your head is completely spinning, and you're reaching for the seat in front of you to try to grab that, to give yourself some sense of balance to hold on. And when you try to stand up or walk, you cannot do it without holding on to something. It's a miserable, miserable feeling. Yep.
Well, as you know, Carl, you're an African American, so.
Yes, that's a miserable feeling? Is that what you're saying?
No, you're listening to the radio. So as an African American, I was talking about this yesterday. I have a stepson. I guess he's a stepson. Yeah, he is a stepson. Who's African American, Zach. So. And so, and I was talking about how in this country, we have elected a black man president twice, not just once. So once was I say, well, okay, that's an aberration, but twice. And still, and I'm not retrying the case at all, but there's still, and I say to Zach all the time, there are certain places where you can't go and certain things you can't do, and it's only because you're black, and those are just the facts. So.
Well, you know, Don, it's fascinating because, first of all, as much as I was enthusiastic about what it meant for America when Barack Obama was first elected, I always took the position that this in no way suggested or meant that we were now entering a post-racial society in America. That clearly was not going to be the case, and I think that many people who thought that was the case became a bit disenchanted with Obama because they thought that somehow that was going to be part of his legacy as well. And in fact, he's probably further away from that than had, say, a Hillary Clinton been elected president, because he has not been able to really address issues of race in a way that could have moved us closer to post-racial society. But you want to speak about Trayvon Martin. Let me just say two things, a couple of things. First, on the negative side of this, as far as what it says about where we are, and I must preface this, Don, nowhere in America should you be able to go up to anybody and unidentified, not identify yourself with a loaded gun and accost them and ask them questions about what they're doing or why they're there, unless they were involved in an active, engaged criminal act or criminal conduct. That is absolutely morally wrong and indefensible. He should never have been able to go up to Trayvon Martin with a gun loaded in his pocket and not identify himself as either part of the community watch or part-time policeman or law enforcement in some way, for Trayvon to know who he was dealing with. Without knowing who he was dealing with, that type of accostation, I would be dead as well, because I would absolutely have said, who are you to ask me? Because I'm just simply walking in the neighborhood where I have an absolute right to be. So that is a problem.
Rather than retry the case, Carl, do we know that that's what happened?
Well, those facts have been stipulated. He did not identify himself to Trayvon Martin, and because he has acknowledged that. And
well, he asked
him about what he was doing there, where he was going.
Carl. You can keep talking, but if you don't let me talk, then we don't get any place. So did he go up to him Was this before the you know, remember the 4 minutes elapsed where they didn't know where each other were?
Mm-hmm.
At what point did Zimmerman talk to Trayvon? Was it after after Trayvon came up to him, or what happened? When did he approach him and talk to him?
Well,
Did he approach him and talk to him, and then the 4 minutes elapsed and Trayvon came back, or was it at the point where the 4 minutes elapsed,
yeah.
and then Trayvon confronted him, and that's when they had their conversation?
Well, those parts of what you're saying, Don, I am not able to stipulate for a fact.
Okay, well, see, so that's why I'm begging you. I went through this with Bo Dietl yesterday.
Yeah.
I just don't want to get. We're not gonna get any place trying to retry the case when we don't know what the facts are. All we know is what came out in the evidence. We do know and I think because it's a young black kid walking through a neighborhood, and there's a watch guy who thinks he looks suspicious. Whether he thinks he looks suspicious because he's black or not, who knows? But he thought he looked suspicious, and one thing led to another. It seems to be clear that whatever happened, based on the evidence that was presented, that Trayvon punched him first. Now, Zimmerman may have asked him before Trayvon punched him what he was doing in the neighborhood and not identified himself. That all may be true, but you see, we're not going to get any place by trying to retry it.
I don't dispute that he may have very well punched first, that Trayvon punched first. What I was talking about was those 4 minutes. I don't know for a fact at which chronological order the 4 minutes came. What I do know is what Zimmerman admitted, which was that he did go up to Trayvon first and asked him questions without identifying himself. That's what I was simply stating, Don. And that's what I object to, that part of it. Now, one other thing, too, Don, for those who are upset about this, let's remember two things. One, this was a criminal case, and there is the reasonable doubt. And the fact is, reasonable doubt is very difficult to overcome, and it is understandable that a jury could have found that there was reasonable doubt that Zimmerman was guilty. I can understand that. Plus, when you combine that with the notion of what the Florida legislature had done, which was enact this Stand Your Ground legislation. And by the way, Stand Your Ground sounds like some kind of MGM cowboy movie with John Wayne, Burt Lancaster, and Glenn Ford or something. I mean, I think it's ridiculous that we're enacting laws like that in a country that lower the bar on responsibility that must be exercised when you possibly could take the life of another human being.
We're rapidly running out of time because, well, for obvious reasons. Let me ask you this. Do you think Zimmerman shot Trayvon Martin because he was black?
I don't think that he necessarily shot him because he was black. I think that race enters into it because he was a black person, and that's where the original profiling came in at that time of night. Zimmerman made assumptions about what Trayvon might be up to, and I think had Trayvon been white, he probably wouldn't have made those assumptions. That's where the race issue comes in. And you said we're out of time, Don, and I must mention this, because the thing that upset me the most the last 2 days after the verdict was all of these anchors on all of the shows, on all of the TV channels were saying things like, well, we can have the conversation about race, or we should have it about race. When? I mean, Don, you and I are the only people in the country that on a regular basis, when there's not a crisis like this, we talk about issues of race in a way that's comfortable for people to try to understand. It's not polarizing and divisive. And all of these other anchors, they come on the bandwagon when something jumps up. And as soon as this elapses 4 or 5 days from now, they won't be talking about it at all.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, I wish we could get someplace with this, but it's just because we just haven't made any progress. I know you and I have been talking about it for years, and it is what it is. So
it's a difficult situation.
I'm sorry
there
for
was
Zimmerman.
one positive,
I'm
though.
particularly sorry that the kid is dead. I mean,
The only positive I saw in the last couple of days, Don, is that in all of the demonstrations, the TV coverage and the pictures in the newspapers, mostly young people, and in every single crowd, at least half of all the people there were white. And I just think that at least shows that these are people who 10 years from now will be on juries. And maybe there is some hope for us generationally.
I hope so. All right, Carl. Thank you very much.
You bet, Don.
My friend Carl Jeffers here in the I'm Swing program. It's 11 minutes now till the hour.